Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Grand Rounds 2022. So happy New Year. I think it's still just about allowable to say that before we enter the second week of January. My name is Tom Fardon. I'm the chair and organizer of Grand Rounds, along with Leslie Crichton. And it's a pleasure to be back. And we have a full schedule all the way through to the end of March with the usual eclectic mix of speakers and talks, including local experts, some invited speakers, and we're going to kick off the year with Professor Rory McCrimmon, who will be familiar to all of you as the Dean of the Medical School here at the University of Dundee and consultant endocrinologist and diabetologist here in Ninewells. He spoke last year about his research interest in hypoglycemia. But this Grand Round today, he's going to talk about the annual review of the University of Dundee School of Medicine, what happened in 2021. I think we'll all agree it was a testing year. We all hoped 2020 would disappear and 21 would be a bit better, and perhaps now we're hoping 2022 will be that year. But exciting things happened at the university. There's a lot of success to share. So I'll hand over to Rory, who's going to tell us a bit about those successes in the medical school. Thanks very much, Rory.
Tom, thanks very much. And of course, Happy New Year to everyone. Tom and I had talked about this briefly last year about how it would be useful to present this annual review of medical school activities, but to colleagues in NHS Tayside broadly. We sort of decided pretty much last minute, so forgive me if I stumble a bit over the odd slide. I gave this talk to the medical school in December, so not surprising, already I've forgotten almost everything that I had in, given everything that we have been going through in this year. And in some ways, the annual review, part of it is to bring the school together, part of it is to talk broadly across the school, because often even within the medical school, we don't know about each other's activities. But also I invite in people from court and Senate and the other deans of other schools, as well as members of the NHS Tayside Health Board, because I think it's incredibly important that education, as well as the research that we do, particularly translational research, is at the forefront of the mind of court and also the NHS Tayside, where I don't think education actually has a particularly prominent place. And given that the major issue that we face is around workforce planning, and COVID is a problem, but workforce planning is absolutely going to be a big problem for us, then I think education and training has to be really core to what NHS Tayside is doing, because we have to attract people to this region to work in a variety of different ways, whether it's in the medical school or within clinical practice. And so part of it is to do that. And part of it is also to thank everybody, particularly colleagues in NHS Tayside. The sort of focus of Dundee, it's the reason it's so well known is because the medical school is embedded within the hospital, and that's pretty unique. And I think that it does so well because of this attitude, this idea of doctors from day one, where clinical training and that clinical exposure is so important to the MBCHB students as they come through. And we rely massively on our NHS colleagues in order to deliver that training. We also rely on our NHS colleagues to work with our biomedical scientists, to work with our clinicians to deliver some of the care that we hope is going to transform and improve people's lives. So it's really a thank you to everyone, because it's been, as Tom said, it's been a really difficult time where the COVID pandemic has had huge effects upon us, both in terms of service delivery, in terms of our preparedness to deliver our teaching programs and our research programs and our service. And I know that, and you're probably tired hearing about it, I know that staff have put a huge amount of effort into actually doing this. So what I'll do is I'll just talk through briefly some of the things that we've done over the years. And I'll focus on the major areas of the school. So we'll start with learning and teaching. We are a medical school, we're a university. That is what ultimately we're about, and ultimately the reputation of Dundee rests on its MBCHB program and what it does, and it has an international reputation for that. And COVID was a period, the second year of COVID was a period of consolidation. We'd gone from that abrupt change in 2020 to suddenly having to put everybody online, to start to think, well, how we continue this, how we can develop this. And of course, as we emerge eventually from COVID, and hopefully that we are going to start to get back to normal, we are absolutely not going to go back to the way we did things previously. That would be a terrible mistake. We've got to take the things that we learned, the things that were beneficial, and we've got to move that forward. And that requires a digital readiness, because there's no doubt we weren't prepared for it in the university, and there's an awful lot we need to do, as there is in the NHS. Our systems are so far out of date. And also digital readiness on the part of staff, because, you know, old buffies like me and many people are not used to this technology, and we've got to get better at how we use this digital technology to deliver on teaching. But again, thanks to all the staff, all the communities, the students whose entire experience changed during this period, our NHS colleagues, our academic and professional services staff. There have been some really good developments. The use of Mentimeter, I'm sure you've come across, and Padlet, the promoting of small group working, breakout rooms, the hybrid sessions, and some form of face-to-face meetings and in-person sessions as we could do them. And developing now a resource of learning tools that we can use and that we can use to help deliver our teaching in the future. And, you know, again, thanks for engaging. Here are some of the online resources that we're developing that we're going to make available to online colleagues, from the common room sessions, which are recorded, that will help you, enable you to use these digital technologies. Some of the online resources are available. And it would be really good, I think, if within each specialty area, we actually had someone who might take leadership in this field and really start to help their colleagues to change the type of programs that we're delivering in education. In general, the feedback from the students actually about this has been good. I know many of you have been frustrated. I know many of the students at times have been frustrated, but actually there have been some very positive experiences about that. They like the regular break. They like the chunking up of lectures together. This is the Netflix generation. I'd rather see a series of lectures in their own time and then move on to smaller case-based discussions or more interactive sessions. And so, you know, as we develop our blocks, particularly in the SIP program around, say, respiratory or diabetes and endocrine, I think we need to completely reform how we do that to accommodate these changes in the way that we deliver education, focusing on the sort of essential needs we need to get across, and then building it into this sort of clinical picture of how we manage people and what we want these doctors, new trainees, to be able to learn over time. They've liked the feedback and the speed of the feedback and the recognition of getting feedback. This is really important for students. They want to know they're going to get some form of feedback, either immediately or later on. The things that are difficult, of course, is if you're sitting at home in front of a screen all day, well, that's exhausting. It sounds bizarre when you're sitting still, but as any of you have known who've worked with Microsoft Teams or been in meetings, it is a difficult process. The lecture content with no voiceover is difficult. That people like to see someone or to hear someone talking, but they value the structure. So some positives, some negatives, learning all the time. And again, you know, appreciating the pre-recorded lectures, because these are resources that they can work with, and they really like the interactive sessions. So the blended approach is something I think will continue into the future. It's difficult to know how to do that efficiently when you've got a big student year. And I think these are some of the challenges that we are going to face going forward. We've developed a whole suite of new postgraduate. I think not the best named course here in health data science for applied precision medicine. Let's just call that precision medicine, or perhaps change its tie. I mean, Alex Stoney is leading up on this, but this is a major strategic area of the school in precision medicine. We're looking now to develop a postgraduate program within that space. Starts up in 2022. It's genetically informed precision medicine. I think this is something that we're all going to need to know increasingly much more about how we use genetics, how we use biomarkers to deliver better care, but even technology to deliver better and more precise care to individuals. So that starts in 22, 23. We have a new course in sports biomechanics and rehabilitation. And Rodney will be delighted to know that we have a design for healthcare masters starting up, working with Duncan Jordanson School of Art and Design, as well as the Nurse and Health Sciences, because I think design is, as we've seen examples of how design can be applied to healthcare delivery, I think this is a really, really interesting area. And of course, I'm sitting with the V&A behind me. We are the center, the city of design in the UK. And I think we need to, of course, make the most of that and bring that sort of design thinking into all that we do. This year is also going to see, 2022 is going to see the start of the new curriculum. Many of you took part, I know, in the curriculum review, and it was really good to see many consultants, many other stakeholders, people in the community, as well as educationists getting involved in redesigning that curriculum, because the doctors of tomorrow are going to be trained in a different way of the doctors of today. And this is a continually evolving process, and it'll be good to see this start, and we will obviously assess it as we progress forward. There's some parts of this curriculum that I think are very different, because what we want to do is, to some extent, that the limitation of medicine has always been that you have to achieve a certain GMC level of safety and ability, which sort of lacks ambition, doesn't it? It means, what is the difference between one medical school and another? And so we've looked very closely at how we can define something about the Dundee doctor. Something is different about the Dundee doctor. And there are many ways in which you can do that, about leadership, about other sort of skills that you bring to the table, apart from your understanding of disease, but also your understanding of things like health inequalities, about global citizenship, your place within the world in terms of medicine, about sustainability. It's not just about COP26. This is clearly a major issue that we need to address in the future. And so we're looking for our students to be thinking bigger, to be doing something more ambitiously about medicine, about their role as doctors in the future. There are also some new technologies. I don't know whether many of you have been down to have a look at the immersive suite that Neil and Joe Keith have set up within the Life Sciences Centre. Neil Harrison is obviously leading on this, not necessarily the best example, but now you can create the environment with the sounds, with the pictures, with the smells of things like the surgical suite and different areas to better train people before they actually then get onto the wards itself. And we signed up. This was just very much a student-led initiative around the planetary health card, looking at what we were doing around sustainability within the curriculum, within our research programs, within our outreach, and we had a student support lead in this process. And I think we've now set up a sustainability group that our head of operations, Richard Scrivener, is going to run, along with Professor Jill Belch, who's got a long-standing interest in the environment. We'll set that work collaborative with the NHS sustainability leads to think of ways in which we can both teach our students to do about what we might be doing in practice in order to address this agenda. And if you think about the number of plastics and other things we use within the NHS, there's an awful lot that we can do in that space. And some very simple things. So this is Graham Kennedy working in a biomarker lab. We have -80 freezers to beat the band scattered around the hospital. And what Gwen was able to show is that you could reduce the temperature a little bit without affecting the quality of the samples we store, and yet the energy saving was massive, and she won an award for that. And so we can share this best practice around the university in different areas around sustainability. We've worked hard on student support. I think this is a really important aspect. We've all been through medical school. We know the sort of demands that are placed upon our students, and every generation is different. And for this generation, mental well-being is absolutely key to them and to their progress and to the way in which they enjoy their education and benefit from their education. So we're looking at the academic mentor scheme, peer mentoring, transfer programs for our international students who are moving to a different culture, a different environment, different way of doing things, linking closely to medical student support. Dow Trust gave us money to further support, particularly those who've coming from less privileged backgrounds as they enter into medical school, and getting a buddy system for the Gateway program, again, helping those whose backgrounds haven't been so enabling. In ScotGEM, this is an interesting year. This is the first cohort are going to graduate in June of this year. This is our 4-year postgraduate program. It's gone really well in their year 3 exams, which are the equivalent of our year 4 exams in the MBCHB program, i.e. their final exams. There were no differences in outcomes between the ScotGEM cohort and the Dundee MBCHB cohort. So it clearly, as a program, appears to be working, and that first cohort are going to graduate this year. That's a real achievement. Scottish Government are looking at this very closely, because this is 55 students who hopefully are going to address some of the issues we have of remote and in general primary care in the community. And it's a very different form of training, fostering this need perhaps to look at rural and remote communities. It's delivered in a different way. We have these generalist clinical mentors within primary care who help train the students and spend a lot of time, obviously, with them. And they're scattered, as you can see, throughout Scotland, from Orkney all the way down to Dumfries and Galloway, particularly in this LIC year, this 3rd year, when they spend the entire year in primary care, and interacting occasionally with secondary care, but it is a very immersive experience for them. And the impact, I think, of that is growing now, and the number of the students who are engaging with their communities, who are developing QI and audit projects and doing significant event analysis. Of course, we had our awards this year, and that's just being listed, but really congratulations to all of our colleagues who received these awards for what they've been doing for teaching within the School of Medicine. And our Centre of Medical Education, again, one of our major centres, had its 5,000th graduate this year. It's really, as an area, it's going from strength to strength with massive outreach in terms of what it does and what it tells us about medical education broadly. So many congratulations to them. They're a core part of the university and part of what really makes Dundee known on the world stage for all of it's done in improving the medical education. Ever since, Ron Harden's work on the spiral curriculum many years ago, we've just gone from strength to strength in that area. We also do a lot of teaching in the biomedical sciences. Many of you are clinicians won't see this aspect of the work quite so much necessarily, but a huge number now of scientists want to come to the medical school because of what we do here. And we've gone from 80 to nearly 140 students of that undergraduate program wanting to do their honours projects, which is their fourth year project up here in the medical school. And also many of them are contributing to third year teaching as well. So this is a big role for many of our staff. Where there is a new joint program in biomedical engineering happening. And on the back of that, we're probably going to be forming a new institute of biomedical engineering and medical technology, which I think for those of you who are interested in this space, who are interested in biomedical engineering, who are interested in the application of med tech to the work that we do, this I think will be a great resource for hopefully collaborations that will improve patient care. And obviously a number of research-led masters, applied neuroscience and precision medicine, as I alluded to later on. There have been a few changes in our program. BMS Julian Davis has retired, and Shihab Gogali has taken over in terms of a joint lead, working along with Gillian Smith, and they will look broadly across the school at all the BMSCs that we have on offer. And then moving on to internationalization. This is a core part of the universities. I think many NHS colleagues don't recognize just how important internationalization is. For the higher education centre, it couldn't survive, frankly, without it. In Scotland in particular, the funding model is such that it costs us to teach a student from Scotland. This has a huge effect on the medical school because the Scottish government has also asked us to ensure that the vast majority of our students are Scots domiciled. And so therefore financially it's important for international students. But it's not just about finances, it's also about cultural diversity, because if 95% of our students are Scots domiciled, then 95% are of Scots background and largely white. And so we miss the diversity that we really do need in a medical school like Dundee. And also it's a bit parochial. We're an international medical school who need to have a global outreach, both in terms of what we do, in terms of our perception, and in terms of the student body that come here, because that's what makes the medical school exciting and Dundee a good place. So internationalization is key for so many reasons in things that we do in the medical school. We appointed a new dean for internationalization just over a year ago, Faisal Khan. Faisal set up a committee working with David Russell, one of our international manager, and really looking at people from across the school who can learn about and help develop internationalization in all of its different aspects, from recruitment to new program development to consultancy work and to research and different things that we do. We have partnerships with a number of universities around the world, and this is just a few of them who are named here, but we obviously have people who come to us. These little circles here on this map are showing people from all over the world who are coming to study in Dundee. And internationalization, you might have seen the news today actually in the BBC about this, but international numbers have gone up massively. So despite all the miserable failings of Brexit and the other things that we appear to be doing to isolate ourselves as a country, actually Britain is seen as a really, really good place to come and study. And Scotland should be very proud of the fact that we have 5 medical schools that are amongst the top in the world. And we need to really start to push that and encourage people to come and to work here at the undergraduate and the postgraduate space. But if people are coming here and if they're paying out substantial funds to be here, we have to ensure that what they get is really high quality and good. And we need to to enable people to join our culture. It's a new culture for them to be part of. So we've got to have a buddy system in place. We need to have student support in place. We need to try and have mentor groupings. Our international students are really keen to meet their colleagues who are qualified, who are working as foundation doctors, etc. So these are the things we try and do and try and support people over, for instance, the festive period. So they're not just isolated and alone during this COVID. And then finally, we keep in contact. We haven't done this particularly well in the past, but an alumni letter just to try and keep updating people around the world who have been to Dundee about the sort of things that we are doing. And our students, these postgraduate students, don't just sit here and come and learn. They actually contribute a huge amount. So, you know, Shreyansh Kayatha was Dundee Volunteer of the Year for his support in the wider community. So he didn't just sit inside, come here and work. He worked really closely with the people in Dundee. And then some of our students are going back. They're going back to their home countries and changing things and improving practice. So this is one of our Gambian students who came and set up our country's first IVF clinic. So it's great to see that sort of impact from Hadi and someone who really enjoyed her time here working in the human reproduction group. In terms of the research postgraduate space, there's been quite a few changes in here over the last year. So Dundee has started something called the Doctoral Academy, which is designed to look at what we're doing in the research postgraduate space, the sort of things that we're offering to PhD students, the environment that they're working in. Graham Reena, who's shown here, is leading on this within Dundee itself. We've started a welcome program so we can start to introduce PhDs. Again, they're new to here, they're new to the medical school, and we need to try and not just leave them in the lab and let them get on with it. It's much more about trying to introduce them to the school, its culture, its people, and then trying to support them through their PhD program. And also not just thinking them as a tool to do our research for us. We need to think about their careers and where they're going and how we might support that career, which may, of course, not be in medicine, it may be or in science, it may be in commercialization or science communication. And I think we need to make different offers for them and help them with their training. In terms of new programs, an exciting new program that Ewan Pearson and Jan Clarkson from the Dental School are part of, which is a new multi-morbidity PhD program for healthcare professionals. And that's been launched, and a series of emails went out recently advertising for people who wanted to do this. And a Northeast of Scotland Alliance Cardiovascular and Diabetes Masters Training Program. So that's ourselves in Aberdeen, putting people as master's students in research in diabetes, cardiovascular medicine, and then obviously trying to hope some will come in as PhD students later on. And for any clinical PhDs out there, I think clinicians or trainees wanting to do PhDs, please direct them to us, to Graham, to Ewan, myself, or some of the clinical academics, so we can try and help them, because we know we don't have academics in every aspect of this school. We want as many trainees as possible, if they wish, to undertake this type of research period. And also there was a 9 Wells Cancer Campaign, a new fellowship program named after Lady Fiona Fraser, who chaired the 9 Wells Cancer Campaign for many, many years. And this is, again, used some of those funds to start new PhDs, where there was a combination between a scientist and a clinician trying to look at translational cancer research. And it's just started this year. I think it's a really exciting new venture, and I'm looking forward to see what these students and their supervisors achieve over the next three years. And again, the important you will note is this combination between the scientists and clinicians, because that's what a medical school ultimately is about. Fundamental science is absolutely important. And you know, discovery science goes everywhere from the bench to the bedside. And I don't get too fussed in terms of translational science about what you're actually doing, because almost everything is ultimately translational in nature. But in a medical school, the majority of the work that we do has to be, to some extent, applied in its nature. So this partnership between scientists and clinicians, and from engineers and clinicians, and from statisticians and clinicians, and from social scientists and clinicians, is absolutely essential. And we're moving to a world of team science now. You don't get big questions answered. You don't get things done, I think, unless you work collaboratively now. And I think it's an important thing to realize. And to the clinicians on this call, no one is expecting a full-time NHS clinician to develop their own independent, massive research program. I mean, no one, very few people have the time to do that. But what clinicians have is a huge amount of expertise in their disease or the area in which they're working, or they have access to tissue samples, or they have access to images, and can help inform on and improve research programs. And so if you do have ideas, please come and talk to us about that, and we can direct you to the relative experts in those areas. So what about research? Well, university didn't come out particularly well in 2014, the medical school in REF. Whole sorts of reasons for that. I think it was politically very badly played. And I think we took a very conservative approach to it. And I don't think our better side was shown. To me, it's amazing. How could we possibly be top in the UK for impact and yet not do so well in terms of our research outputs? And I think that had to do with the way we managed it rather than actually the work that was being going on. But things have improved, I think, considerably since that time. We don't know the results yet of REF 2021. This is the research assessment exercise, which looks at the breadth and the quality of our research program compared to other institutions. We won't know until about May. But our GPA average is 3.94 with the maximum being 4. So if that is true, that means the vast majority of our outputs and every one of our academics was returned in this case, had at least a 4-star output, which is the best it can be. So that's really, really good. Now, chances are we will not get that sort of level. I'd be amazed if we do, but it's looking much better. And we have 4 very high quality impact cases, and we also contributed to many other schools. We contributed to the education and social work return through our medical education groups. We contributed to the engineering sciences return. We contributed to the neurosciences return. In fact, we were a large component of the neuroscience return as well from the school. So we contributed to 4 or 5 different unit of assessments in this school. We've also improved our environment considerably, which is something we had to do. Degraying the faculty. We're getting there. We've got a long way to go. We had only 1 early career fellow in 2014, which seems bizarre to me at the time how we arrived at that figure, but there you go. Whereas we were up to about 20 or 25%. And you need to have that. You need to replenish constantly in the next generation. And I would say to you now, the workforce planning issue that I've just raised, where 40% of posts in the NHS are unfilled, is the same in the medical school. And we currently have 2/3 of the clinical academics are professors, and the majority of them are over the age of 55. And that is a terrible figure that we need to desperately address over the next few years. And part of the reason that I talk about how well the medical school is doing, and part of the reason we need to push our teaching programs and improve our financial state, is so that we can recruit more clinical academics. And we also need to work very closely with our colleagues in the NHS, because the system that seems to evolve over the last few years, where you are either NHS or you're a university, is not effective. Most clinical academics are best sitting with a foot in both camps and funding from both camps. And I think we need to work on that closely. What are our major strategic aims in research? Well, not surprisingly, to exploit the informatics and genomics revolutions to improve medicine and healthcare. This is a precision medicine space where we are absolutely world leading and have been for many, many years. And I think that's something that we need to work on. We have great resources here, both within Dundee and Scotland. And what this means, of course, is that no longer does Dundee become just the area that you research. The whole of Scotland, and increasingly working with big databases around the world, become your research tool. We need to develop multidisciplinary research. As I said to you earlier on, this is not the era of the individual in science anymore. Most conditions over the age of 65, as you know, most diseases are multimorbid disease with people on many medications. So, you know, from the work that's done to understanding disease processes with multimorbidity, to the work that Memo do, looking at pharmacovigilance and low frequency adverse side effects in people on many, many different drugs and how these interact. This is critical to the advancement of patient care, and there we will focus on. We need to develop translational research between the lab and the clinic. We're going to get a lot of genetic information, a lot of biomarker information, but what does that actually mean? And that's where it takes working with scientists to understand better disease, to understand better mechanism, to understand better how our drugs and other things work. And of course, we need to engage with the NHS at every level in order to ensure that this then leads to changes in patient care, to changes in policy, to changes in guidelines. We need to work with industry, because you can't deliver the vast majority of what we do without working with industry. And sometimes, you know, obviously this engagement with industry is seen as a sort of bad thing, whereas to me, you know, frankly, we could not do what we do without it. And so most of us as clinical academics will and should work with industry, and I would argue that most clinicians should and ought to work with industry as much as recognizing the limitations and recognizing what industry is there to do, But I still think to advance the type of work, the new diagnostics, the new technologies, we need to be doing that. And of course, we need to work with our community. You know, we've got to be more than just externally focused and look at what are the major problems in Dundee. Perhaps, you know, things like drug deaths, health inequalities ought to be much more of a focus of what we do in the medical school. And I'll try and push that as much as I can over the next few years. Now, Health Informatics Core, Emily Jefferson, who is directing this, been a real star, Emily, in the last few years, who's done incredibly well. As of the entire group, there are now over 50 people who work in that group, supporting research from many, many people around the UK and globally. They've had some really big successes. This is a very important resource. And again, I would say to clinicians, if you are interested in developing databases, if you are interested in gathering more information about the type of work you're doing, have a chat with Hick and the team. Everything ultimately costs money, but we can work collaboratively together to try and do this, because some of the things that emerge from this are really fascinating. I mean, I'm a diabetologist, and of course, Sky Diabetes. Tom, I see Tom is on the call, but Tom, I think, originally pointed Andrew Morris to get going on. But now is every aspect of what we do in diabetes is effectively underpinned by Sky Diabetes, and it's not just a fantastic clinical tool; it's an amazing research tool which is changing practice globally and giving us new insight into disease. So you cannot underestimate how important this type of work is, and linking those electronic health records with biomarkers, with all the work that's going to go on in genetics, whether we like it or not, is a great and rich area of research, which clinicians can do very, very well if they put a mind to it. And last year in particular, there was a big success in the pain field with 3 major grants. Emily Jefferson with the Pain Hub, Tim Hales with the Alleviate program, and also in CAPE, along working with Leslie and Blair Smith and a huge number of other people, looking at early life adversity and its implications for the experience of pain. But again, look at this up here on the right, you can see all these individuals in blue there in their figures, you know, multidisciplinary research, co-creation, working with patients in order to determine what is the area of critical need and where should research be directed, things that we're going to see much more of in the field over the years. And then finally, diabetes, building on all the work that we've done over the year. Ewan Pearson was leading on this. There's a multidisciplinary approach. Ewan was involved. I was involved in this. Ellie Dow, Chim Lang, John Dillon, Ify Mordy, a number of others, looking at precision diabetes. So an award of around 3 million, only 4 centres awarded in Scotland from the CSO in precision diabetes, 3 in Edinburgh, surprise, surprise, and 1 in Dundee, none in Glasgow and Aberdeen. There probably will be war within the Scottish research environment for this, but there you go. We were successful on this one. We've leveraged 2 million of funding. We're literally randomizing most of the population and doing both genetics, biomarker development, and looking how you can better treat disease based upon their phenotype, because it's no longer a simple world of type 1 and type 2 diabetes. It's much more vague than this. And multimorbidity means that there's often fatty liver disease, heart failure, other conditions that need to treat, and drugs that have multiple effects. So we're really excited to see this. It should start later on this year. And of course, we're also building into that issues around adherence and prescribing and health inequalities in order to try and improve access to an equity of access to care, as opposed to just equality of access. And then we continue with Share. Share, which is again, a tool that we have here that underpins many research as a means of bringing participants into clinical trials broadly around the country. And so it's a huge resource here. And we have TASK, which is our clinical research center, which did a huge amount of work, you know, often not recognized within the school and within the university and the hospital itself. But Dundee was one of the only trial sites for the J&J trial, brought in the first global recruitment. And they continued working as well throughout the pandemic. So we can try and trial more vaccines that were, of course, going to be critical to our COVID response. And Jacob, just to let you all know, Jacob George, who many of you will know Jacob. Jacob was R&D director. He's now stepped down. Russell Petty has taken over as interim R&D director. And of course, Jacob's done a huge amount in his 6 years in the role, and we're really grateful for all that he has done. And of course, we'll continue to work with Jacob in many different ways over the years as he continues to work in regulatory medicine broadly. But he didn't, of course, just do his R&D role. Some of Jacob's work, this paper in particular on the cardiovascular effects of e-cigarettes, was one of the top 5 papers in Altimetrics. So really high impact worldwide through this work that he did. And then, I saw Tom, and I don't know whether Alice is on the call as well, and Alex Donay, but the VAC for COVID trial, I've had my little bit through the post, and I'm sure most of you have been in contact about that. And that's trying to look at the safety and the efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccines, and over 16,000 participants. So it should be a really interesting source of information. The other bit I would highlight, I mean, apart from just the sheer scope of work that Memo Research does, is the remote clinical trials, which I think Isla in particular is spearheading, which I think is really important. Digital technologies are changing the way that we work. And so you can now access information from participants anywhere in remote parts of Scotland, through their handheld monitors, through continuous glucose sensors, through their little Apple Watch, which seems to measure everything under the sun. And that allows you to follow people up in ways that were not possible in the past. And you can do remote consent. And I know Tom has pioneered this type of work, and many others. And so that means that we can do these big trials, even from smaller parts of the country. Really important area of work. Other things that we've done, this is Russell Petty's work, working with looking at the impact of COVID on cancer medication delivery, setting up this shiny app dashboard for people to use so the NHS can respond rapidly to changes and fluctuations in care during lockdown. Sarah Martins de Silva working with Chris Barrett and others in terms of infertility. This work is really going from strength to strength at the moment, a very close link between DDU and the medical school, the drug discovery unit, in life sciences, looking at new treatments for male infertility. They've managed this great success of being able to research both male infertility as well as issues around in vitro fertilization and reproduction. So there you go, treating the disease from both ends. And last year was the 100th anniversary of the discovery of insulin, so something not surprisingly very close to my heart. But Callum Sutherland, one of my colleagues, set up a whole series of talks around Scotland for the public around what Scotland has done, because Scotland actually has done a huge amount in terms of just diabetes research broadly and its discovery, all the way back to R.D. Lawrence and various other people involved in the discovery of insulin itself. Our funding for 2021 was 20 million in grants, about 4.3 million in overhead, 111 grants funded from a whole variety of groups around the world. Now, the other big development that's happening is something called the Tay Cities deal, and this was signed off by the Scottish Government, bringing money into Dundee. And one of the areas to develop this Tay City deal is about creating employment for people in different parts of the country. And for Tay Cities, not surprisingly, it is Dundee and Tayside. And the money that came to Dundee was around innovation, broadly drug discovery, with a new system that's going to be set up within main campus down by Hawkhill, and also medtech, which is going to be a redevelopment happening in Wilson House. And Graham Houston and a number of others are sort of leading on this sort of area, looking at medtech developments, and particularly in interventional radiology. And you all know about the stroke thrombectomy work that is happening. And we're going to be really investing in and hoping to deliver more of this in the future. Wilson House, which is a little building opposite the car centre, the other side of the car park, the far side of Ninewells here, is going to be redeveloped over the next year. And so we'll be able to do much more work, as you can see, in terms of interventional radiology. We'll be engagement with industry, hopefully the development of small companies who can exploit some of this technology that we have available and develop, provide ultimately, we hope, of course, employment opportunities for people in Dundee. And Graham, I'm sure, is going to present to you at some time a little bit more about that. And this whole idea of time, the Tayside Innovation MedTech Inner System, looking at the whole, I mean, it's very ambitious here. We're mostly focused, not surprisingly, just on stroke at the moment with Graham and Iris Grunwald, but clearly many other areas that can perhaps get involved when this is up and running. And so once it's more established, we'll hopefully present at Grand Rounds and let people know about the facilities that are available. And feeding into that is obviously the pioneering work that is happening in terms of stroke medicine. But I know you've heard about that through the NHS and the grand rounds before. Again, I'm looking to see CT scans in ambulances and much more other things happening in this space in the future. And then MRI guided focus ultrasound. That was the big thing last year. This is the work that Kismet and Tom Gilbertson have been doing and bringing together, working with colleagues around Scotland. The university working with the community had raised the funds in order to purchase this focus ultrasound scan, which has now been set up and allows us initially to treat people with obviously intractable movement disorders such as essential tremor. We've had the first participants who've been through, patients who have been through this process now. I'm sure you've seen this. This is the individual obviously with severe Parkinson's disease and a movement disorder who couldn't draw these spiral circles, and then very quickly after that focus up, literally a matter of hours, able to much better do that process. I had for Court and others arranged for a video. I won't show that now, but if you've ever had a chance to see this, I think it's really impressive. And so we're looking forward to seeing how that works, whether that hopefully will become adopted by NICE and then something that we can be approved through the NHS in the future. And that's what we want to see. We want Dundee to be leading on some of these innovations, which then hopefully lead to NICE approval or policy change, and then we can then start to use it within the hospital more routinely. I talked about time and the Tayside deal. Well, what we're trying to do now is embed commercialization much more. It's not something we generally do well in Scotland, but of course, wealth creation is important both for the nation, but also for Dundee. And so we are trying to develop commercialization. And for those people who are interested in, Graham previously chaired that group. It's now moved on to James Cantley and Scott Cunningham. We're looking at they've created a committee, people involved in really different aspects of this to offer training, to teach people more about it. So you have ideas and you want to take them further, please come and talk to them or get in contact with me or one of the clinical academics and we can point you in the right direction. They've started up venture business ideas competition. I mean, I don't know whether you know about it, but there's a talk happening on the 24th from an ex-medical student in Dundee who left at the end of third year. Heaven forbid he dropped out of medical school, but he's just sold his company for 400 million. So I think he wasn't doing too badly in the space of medical informatics. So good on him. But other students already, as well as colleagues, are starting out these little small companies with seed funding from Scottish Enterprise and other areas to develop ideas that they can take and hopefully develop as entrepreneurs of the future. And John Foster's been doing a lot of work here with his company Glenclovis Scientific, given an award for his work looking at vaccine development. And we offer this in training. So this is Colin Murdoch, who runs something called iPlacenta, which is a PhD training program around placental disease more broadly. And through that, we're able to create training programs in entrepreneurship, which we open up then to all of the PhD students within Dundee itself. In our professional services group, they're key to very much all of what we do. We've been setting up a SharePoint. Now I'm showing this because this is an internal site that provides information for the university staff. But what we're also going to be developing, and I'm poor old Tom, because I keep holding them all back here, but we're going to have a site available for honorary staff as well. I think we need to be clear about the honorary process. My feeling is everybody in NHS Tayside should have an honorary position. I think we should get rid of all these ridiculous different names that we have and be very simple: lecturer, senior lecturer, reader, chair, and then have clear criteria for what we see as promotion from lecturer to senior lecturer to reader to chair. And also what that expectation is, because I think NHS colleagues bring something really, really valuable to the university, but I'm keen that they continue to deliver that really valuable contribution to the university in many different ways. And so that will be coming this year. Quite soon, actually, we'll be putting it forward. I'll set up a group of clinical academics as well as NHS consultants who can then peer review and to look at this process and recommend people for promotion. And we'll be clear on what those criteria are for promotion. And we've also redeveloped our website. It's got a long way to go, but it's a heck of a lot better what it does. And of course, you need to have that web presence for everything that you do. In terms of our people, we have appointed a new academic dean for academic performance and culture, Jenny Harvey, who's done a huge amount of work already in terms of her role in equality, diversity and inclusion, as well as the Athena Swan areas. We obviously had an LGBT month led by Kevin McConville and Black History Month, and all staff meetings now have EDI slots in terms of everything that we actually do. I think this is about valuing people, it's about the student experience and about raising that awareness broadly. I mean, we have to respond and we have to recognize the structural inequalities in our system that the Black Lives Matter movement highlighted, that have always been there. But I think this serves to really illustrate something and an area that we do need to address very importantly. We've also had a number of awards from staff, and I guess I won't go through all of these, but many of the names you will recognize who have had various awards, both in terms of their contributions in science, in medicine, and more broadly in terms of impact and knowledge exchange in the worldwide, not just obviously in the UK. And here's some personal awards, people like James and John and Adrian, Soren, and have had various awards here. And I can't end without Jill Bell, Scots Woman of the Year 2020, which was the reason it was 2020, but it was awarded in 2021 and announced in the Glasgow Herald, who run this sort of competition. And Jill's campaign for face masks raised more than 430,000, delivered millions of pieces of PPE around the country. So it was really good to see the huge amount of effort she put into this being rewarded. But even our PhD students, so this is Holly Keir, who works with James Chalmers, and Holly has an amazing story of resilience of someone who frankly was rejected by many different schools earlier on in her career, but continued to, on universities, but continued to go through, eventually got through, did her undergraduate, did a PhD, and now has the British Thoracic Society's Early Career Investigator Award and PhD Student of the Year in Dundee. So resilience, it pays off. And for someone who failed membership as many times as I did, I'm completely with Holly here. I think this is what you just got to keep going. And the other form of resilience, of course, we have is people, and people who have been in Dundee for many, many, many years. And we have these long-term service awards for 15 years, 25 years, and 40 years. So 40 years ago in 1981. So this is when Charles and Di got married. The Social Democratic Party was formed transiently, when Indiana Jones came to our screen, when Bucks Fizz won the Eurovision Song Contest, but frankly, they can never, ever replace ABBA. And Liverpool used to win things many, 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 many years ago, 1981. Now, at the same time, Jerry Lambert, one of our professors in neuroscience, came to Dundee. He's been with us ever since and done a huge amount of work over the years in neurosteroids and pain receptor in the body, neuropharmacology. And Hugh Tunstall-Pedo, who's an emeritus professor, came to Dundee in 1981 when he was already a chair, and set up some of the extended population studies that we have from epidemiology. And he was still, I know, works intermittently still with colleagues in cardiology. So that's it. I'll whistle through tour. There is time for a few questions at the end. I just want to sum up to say thank you to everybody, to all of my colleagues within NHS Tayside who have really helped us achieve our core mission. It has been a really difficult period. I am hoping, Tom will tell me if I'm right or wrong, that we are beginning to emerge from this period, and I think we're looking forward to taking all of the good things and continue to develop as a medical. So we are, ultimately Dundee is a small place, 150,000 population with a small and new university, and yet we are one of the most research intensive universities in the UK. We have an outstanding MBCHB program that is always in the top 5 of medical schools in the UK, and I think that is an amazing achievement when you think about it. And a great place to live. Who wouldn't want to come to Dundee, Tom? That's what we've got to keep saying. Okay, thanks.
Thanks very much, Rory. I agree. Why would you ever want to leave once you get here? What is it that Stephen Fry said? A ludicrously situated city, I think is what he said when he was rector here. So does anybody have any questions or comments? Just if you want to either stick your hand up or put something in the chat, or just... or Rory gets off the hook without any questions. That's a bit... Okay, looks like there's stunned silence, Rory. I mean, I think for just listening to that for 50 minutes, what an amazing amount of work that's gone on in the medical school. I have a toe in the medical school, and spend most of my time in the NHS, and it's easy to not see all this work, this amazing work that's going on. And part of the Grand Rounds idea at the beginning, 7 years ago now, was to try to make sure that we do have this link between the university and NHS, that we can highlight this kind of work. So I'll be scribbling down the names of the people who've won all these awards to get them to come and give talks at Grand Rounds, to share in a bit more depth the kind of work that they've been doing. So I'll be on to you to try and get those people along. It'd be very, very interesting, I think, for example, to hear from Holly as an example of what has been her journey through all this to where she's reached now. You mentioned the honorary
Yes.
promotion part of things. You said it would be soon. Is there any sort of timescale on that, if anyone in the audience is wondering about that?
I can't give you the exact time, but it will be soon. And it will be in the first quarter of this year, definitely, because it's gone on for too long and I'm getting irritated now. So it's going to happen, Tom, because what we've got to do, of course, is move away from an old boys network of people in smoky rooms deciding who doesn't get an honorary position. That is completely wrong. We need to make sure that everybody within NHS Tayside is aware of the system. Fundamentally, as I said, if you're an NHS consultant or not in Tayside, I don't see why you don't have an honorary position, and we should not make that a laborious process. You should just get it because you are involved in teaching in various different ways. Where I think that there needs to be an element of control, if you like, is around promotion to senior lecturer, reader, chair, because that has to be based upon contribution broadly in what you're doing. It can't be the same as someone who's a clinical academic, because we're given time to do that sort of thing, whereas in NHS you're not. But I think we need to recognize that, and I think we need to value it because it's so important for us and so important for our students and everybody else. So that need to be done. It need to be done appropriately. There need to be some changing around of the names because there seem to be 100 different names for the same role for some reason in school. And colleagues have done a huge amount of work to look at that, particularly someone from professional service called Robert Holmes has done a huge amount of work pulling this together. So it's all there to go, Tom. I think it just had to be a little tick box through the medical school board, and then we get it out. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's great. The transparency angle, I think, is really good to give some nice, clear guidance for people in the audience who are listening.
Well, and what I wanted to say, Tom, is that we will bring together a group of people to look at the decision making here, and it will not just be people from the university. It'll be NHS colleagues and people in the university, because that's what it is. This is a joint award, effectively. Fantastic.
Okay. Any questions from the audience? If not, we'll sign off. Next week at Grand Rounds, sustainability is our focus. The title is Progressive Procurement and Ecological Endoscopy. We welcome Andy Hay and Rosemary Haddock, who are going to talk to us about what is a really important part of a lot of medical and surgical practice in the endoscopy unit. It has in the past been perhaps not the most ecologically sound process, with a lot of washing of a lot of scopes. And they're going to talk to us about how they have improved the from an ecological standpoint, what we do down in endoscopy. So do tune in for that. If you would like a slot at Grand Rounds, please email me, text, send me a message in some way or other. We'll get you a slot. As I say, we're full to the end of March, but so that gives you a bit of time to prepare. Thanks so much again, Rory. Fascinating stuff. Really appreciate you coming in at the last minute, and I'll see you all again next week.
All right, take care, everyone. Bye now.